the blue hell did I just watch? Not a comprehensive movie, that's for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle Haas. And in this video, we got to talk about Madam Web making me want to sell all of my ASM 210s. Taking my books down to Mephisto's realm. Ruining the value of my comic books. This terrible movie. What the hell was that? You know, I decided, hey, I got a YouTube channel. I talk about movie, comic book stuff. Even though this movie is something that I'm not very interested in, I'm going to spend my Sunday and go and watch this movie. Because maybe I'll talk about it this week. And let me tell you guys, I went to the movies. I did. Bought a matinee. And I sat in that theater for 25 minutes. I couldn't stomach it. I honestly, I couldn't go any longer. I sat there and I thought to myself, what are you doing here? This is awful. I don't think I want to be here for another hour. And I actually walked out. Yes, this is the second movie in my history that I actually walked out of. Can I tell you a little story about the other one? Man, back in 1994, I was 10 years old. Went to my local movie theater and saw the movie Junior, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. Man, was that movie bad. I was with all my friends, and we were just sitting there, eating our popcorn, and we're just like, hey, when's Arnold Schwarzenegger going to blow up some stuff? When's he going to turn into Terminator 2? Or when are these guys going to be like funny, like twins? Neither thing happened. That movie was not it. I had to walk out of that theater. It has been 30 years since I've walked out of another theater. And now with Madam Web, I just did that. Guys, I'm appalled, okay? I know this is not a movie review channel, okay? But bear with me on this, okay? I need to get some things off my chest, okay? Allow me to talk for a second. There's a lot of conversation out right now about this movie, and studio interference and all this stuff, and different YouTubers are giving their hot takes and articles are being written about this and all this stuff. And yeah, studio interference is annoying, okay? I can't say that I've ever worked for Sony Pictures at that capacity. I can't say that I've ever worked directly under Kevin Feige for Marvel Studios, but I have worked for studios and I have worked for Disney, of all places. So I understand what that dynamic, I can envision it and imagine what the dynamic is working with studio interference at that level and having to placate to all of the different departments like marketing, like sales, all these different places. I understand. I've been on so many conference calls with hundreds of people talking about little things that I didn't care about because I'm just making the commercial, okay? But I didn't care to talk to the sales department about what they had in mind. But I knew that was the job. That is the job. And so there's all these people right now talking about how studio interference and blah, blah, blah. It's hard to make a movie. And yes, all those things are true. But at the end of the day, coaches coach, players play. How do professional filmmakers turn out that? That is embarrassing. That's some Kyle Shanahan not running the ball in the Super Bowl levels of embarrassing. That's what that is. At the end of the day, yeah, there's a lot of things, but you are the filmmaker. That's your job. You got to churn out something coherent. That you have to take all of the elements, all of the interference, and you have to be the magician. You have to win and make a good film in spite of all of the other elements. If this were pro sports, these players would be shipped to Buffalo tomorrow. That's what would be happening right now if this were pro sports. But in filmmaking, it's a little harder to say because it's all subjective. Anyways, I'm done talking about this movie. I want to transition it now to comic books, the stuff that you guys are interested in. Thank you for allowing me to do a little bit of a rant. Let me know if you guys actually want me to do a little more movie review stuff. I'm interested in this stuff. I'll probably do it from a different level. Maybe I can do a little more of a technical analysis of this. I sometimes have visions of getting my little stylus and then having images and drawing over it like John Madden and showing you guys technical things about why I think that this is poorly directed or poorly shot or whatever. That would be kind of fun. Anyways, let's talk about the comic books right here. Oh, also, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Forgot to do it because I was ranting so much. But I pulled up this article from The Hollywood Reporter to set us up on our conversation here today. Inside Sony's Madam Web collapse, forget about a new franchise. And it had me thinking just in general about the Sony universe, the comic books that relate to it. You know, even later on this year, we're going to be getting Kraven the Hunter. You know, we got the ASM 15 to talk about. We got ASM 41 to talk about. First Rhino. And then later on, we have Venom number 3. You know, ASM 300, everybody's favorite book. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about those books and kind of pose the question, what really happens to a lot of our comic books that are effectively hurt by the presentation of the film? And I think one of the best case studies we can use for this, at least in the Sony universe, is the first appearance of Morbius. But let me just kind of show you guys this article because there are some interesting talking points that, you know, everyone is kind of floating out with Madam Web. The flop is wiping out an entire plan for a new movie series as the studio becomes the latest superhero studio in need of a pivot. You know, this is a monumental flop. I believe that Madam Web is the first superhero movie to not open #1 in the box office for the last maybe 10 to 15 years, something like that. Like, this is like on a worse scale than even the flops like Shazam or Ant-Man and those types of movies. But I mean, I think that was kind of expected, you know, even for the Sony movies have been hurting already. So like, it was going to be hard for this movie of all Sony movies to, you know, top the charts, even though I don't even know what came out this weekend. So I don't even know what this movie lost to. But the article just kind of goes on to break down, you know, that, you know, the Sony is trying to do, you know, its Sonyverse and all this sort of stuff. And they thought Madam Web was going to be maybe like a character that they could break out. And, you know, this is the thing, you know, popular characters are popular for a reason. We've talked about it on the channel many, many times. And a lot of these characters, you know, are going to have a hard time, you know, being able to lead their own superhero film. I mean, Madam Web can't even command her own ongoing comic book title. What makes people think that she can command a $100 million movie? The same people that think that Kraven can command a $100 million movie. A character that, like Madam Web, is a antagonist slash anti-hero within the Spider-Man franchise that, yeah, like maybe every now and again you can have a limited 4-issue run, like every 15 years for like the 3 Kraven fans out there. But this movie is going to have a hard time being able to be profitable at the box office. And I understand why they make these movies. I mean, you guys know, you've probably heard by now, you know, they want to keep the Sony Spider-Man license. So they have to like probably churn out like a couple movies a year in order for the license to stay under them. Like, even if they flop on all of these titles, they're all going to make it back when they eventually make Spider-Man 4 and that makes $1 billion. I mean, you would hope. You'd hope that they don't ruin the brand of Spider-Man. But one of the things I wanted to talk about were, of course, the comic books related to it. Now, I made a joke about me wanting to sell all my ASM 210s. I actually don't have any ASM 210s at this current moment in time. But I'm going to be honest, if I did have an ASM 210, yeah, I might Jim Cramer over here and just go sell, sell, sell. That might be my reaction to having seen that movie in the theater. And again, it shouldn't actually affect my perception of the book. It really shouldn't. You know, the book is still the book. Like, this is still a great Spider-Man book with an awesome character that shouldn't be tarnished by the movie. But you guys know what it is. I mean, it's going to have an effect on the culture, at least for the next 5 to 10 years or so, until everybody can forget that movie. But it's interesting with the 9/8 right here, 217 on the census, 30-day moving is 788. Last couple sales for this were 713, and I think this one was a 700. And actually, those sales were a little bit higher than where this book had dipped down to the 680 and 690 range. Of course, 9/8 at this level, not easy to get, 6.4%. But one of the things that worries me about this book is that there was a little bit of an artificial inflation in the hype of the movie. You know, this movie was announced back in the 2018 time. And you guys can actually see, like, this is a book that even all the way back in 2007, 2006, had highs of, you know, 312 and 386. So fairly flat for a long time. And then kind of in the later 2010s, you know, this book was steadily around the 415, 450, 400 range, you know, for many years. So the floor gets a little bit lifted. And again, if you've heard me talk about New Mutants 98, like, this is the type of the book that comes out of collections, and there's always new 9/8s that go into the census. So it gets lifts of floors, but then, you know, those floors stay steady for many, many years. I mean, that's going to be the journey of this book always. And then when this movie was announced, it jumped up to an $800 book. So from 2018 to 2020, it was an $800 book. We got the COVID boom, which made this book go crazy. And now we're in 2024, we're sort of at this $800, $690, similar to that of pre-COVID prices. And that kind of tracks alongside of, the comic book index and how we've been kind of looking at it and evaluating where prices might go and what might be a good, entry point into a book and things like that. But with this movie coming out and being so critically, panned by everybody, you have to wonder if this is going to go the route of Morbius, a book that I think is fair to say has overcorrected in terms of its value. ASM 101 First Morbius, we all know what it is. I mean, when Morbius came out, that was a movie that everybody made fun of. I mean, and it just ruined the brand of the book. And again, I know you guys are cringing out there thinking that why does movies ruin the brand of the book? I'm not saying that they should. I'm just saying this is what it is. And so I look at a book like this, and let's take a grade range that has enough, volume of sales. I'm going to say, focus in on the 9.0 here. And you can see that this is another book that felt the artificial bump of it being greenlit in 2018. So, all the way back in 2016, 2017, it's 9.0 is a 400, 500. And then in 2017, maybe that's when it got announced, jumps up to 600. Maybe there's casting or something. I can't quite remember the details. You guys probably remember. But in 2018, it gets this artificial bump. And then for 2018, 2019, it's hovering at this $1,200, $1,300 range. COVID happens, and everything resets back down to where now, it's at the same range it was back in 2018. And you have to be a little bit worried of, is this going to also reset? Because was this artificially inflated all the way back when? If I look at a grade like 8.0 right here, you can see this has actually gone less than that of the value where it was at in 2018. So again, it gets the artificial bump because possibly this is the first time that Morbius was announced or whatever at San Diego Comic-Con, and it goes from a $400, $500 book in 8.0 up to a $700, $800 book, stays flat for many years, goes to COVID, corrects all the way back down, and now sells actually less than that of the artificial bump. This last $512 sale is more in line to where the book organically was before there ever was a movie to talk about. So I say all that to say this, when we're looking at a book like ASM 210, and we're thinking that maybe this book got artificially inflated because of the hype of the movie, and now that people have soured on it, you should expect this book to reset to pre-artificially inflated prices. Now, the only difference here is 6% at the 9.8 level versus I'm focusing on an 8.0, which is 27%. So I might expect the 9.8s to be able to hold up fairly well, but those 9.6s, those 9.4s, they might dip all the way back down. And that's something that's really interesting to think about, when we're talking about this. And again, I know sometimes you guys are not really interested in the values of comic books and all this stuff. I'm just kind of highlighting some of these numbers so that you guys are out there. If you're interested in picking up an ASM 101, you might be able to use this information to determine what a good price for you may be. Now, later on this year, we also have Kraven coming out. Obviously, ASM 15, first appearance of Kraven. We got ASM 41, first appearance of Rhino. And these are other books that, I'm going to say right now, there's no reason for me to think that Kraven is going to be a good movie based on everything that Sony has done, right? Yeah, I mean, this movie might be critically panned in the same way as Madam Web. And if I look at an 8.0 right here, and I see where this book is currently at, I mean, this concerns me, right? Last sale for the 8.0 here was $3,000, which is pretty high considering before this book was announced, before it became a movie that was coming, back in February of 2018, this was a $1,400 book. Now, it's an early ASM book. There's always going to be value here. It's a great, great, great book to have. But is now the best time to buy it? I'm not so sure about that. You know what I mean? I'm not so sure about that based on what I've seen with the comic book index, based on what I've seen with, the reactions to this movie, based on what books like Morbius have done. I mean, this being a 1964 Silver Age might change, the trajectory, but it's a little bit concerning. I would, at minimum, I would expect this book to eventually go back down to this $2,600 price point, November 2020 price. Maybe a little higher than that, $2,800, $3,000 at the low. That's kind of where I would expect this to be. And you can actually see, I mean, this last sale of $3,120 is already flirting with that price. This is the floor price at auction, the latest Heritage. So that's just something to consider with this book. I think we see a similar trajectory here with Rhino. Let me just pull up a 7.0, a nice round number. First appearance of Rhino, and you can see, again, another book that has been slow and steady on the rise, and then had COVID prices, and now where it kind of sits, $630 last sale, but in December of 2020, it was $473. So it's not out of the question for this book to go mid 500s at a certain point. That's what I would expect. And you can see, like, every now and again, a Hakes auction right here, $585. Like, this is the bottom basement floor value. And that's kind of what I'm talking about with a lot of these prices. Now, the last book I want to talk about before we totally wrap up the video right here is, of course, ASM 300. We have Venom 3 coming out later this year. And ASM 300, I mean, what can you say about this book? It's a Copper Age book. There's always more risk with Copper Age. I mean, just based on how many there are on the census. Of course, it's also a very in-demand book. I mean, there's always going to be people that want to buy this one. But this is also coming off of the CGC situation, right? Or even Go Collect will show you. Here, they have the red flags right here on these books. And shout out to Go Collect. I mean, this sale was identified as one involved in the holder tampering incident investigated by CGC. So this is one that, you know, I wonder how many people out there are seriously buying 9.8 ASM 300s. You know, I wouldn't be doing that right now. I certainly wouldn't be doing that right now. I mean, if you want a raw copy, go for it. You want to buy a lower grade, like a 9.4, I think that might be okay too. You know, make sure you buy the best version of that 9.4, but I don't know if I would risk the biscuit on getting a 9.8 slab ASM 300 right now. I mean, not just because of all the CGC stuff, but everything I've been talking about here with, you know, Venom. I mean, again, this book in 2020, before it got inflated, which it actually got the early Copper Age inflate, doubling in August, went from 2,400 to 4,000 overnight. And right now where it sits is at 3,300. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for this book to go back down to this $2,400 price point. And again, even back here when we got the first Venom movie, this book got inflated. And you can see generally how flat it was for many, many, many years. Because again, this is a book that is a Copper Age book. It's always going to surface in collections, right there. You think of how many people are always selling their comic book collections, and dealers always swoop them up. And there's always a raw ASM 300 in there, and that raw ASM 300 gets pressed and cleaned and sent to CGC, and has a good chance to hit 9.8. You know, so that supply is always counteracting the demand, which prevents the price from steadily climbing. So a little bit of a concern with that, but that was my little video talking about Madam Web hurting the values of our comic books because people hated the movie. And I know that's stupid. I know that is stupid, but it is what it is. I mean, people like to share their treasures, right? So if I have an ASM 210 right now, and I decide to post it on Instagram and say, oh, I love my ASM 210, you know someone's going to be in the comments and they're going to say, that movie was trash. Because it was. And that's going to hurt your feelings. And as a comic book collector, feelings are very important. I don't want to get my feelings hurt because I own this book and I like it. So I'm just going to not put it on the wall and put it off to the side because I don't want people to make fun of me for the book that I have that is related to the movie that everyone is making fun of. So if I was one of those people holding those Sony books, I'd be a little bit concerned. Anyways, that's all right for this video. That was me just doing a little bit of a market report analysis. Let me know if you guys are down for me to do more movie review type of stuff in the future. I think that could be kind of fun. Anyways, that's all I got for this one. Like, comment, subscribe. Sandy Kickstarter. If the bar is Madam Web, if that's professional writing, I feel pretty confident that you guys are going to like my comic book. If that's the bar, go follow the pre-launch page. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.